Welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and I am very excited to check back in with Lee Wheeler-Berliner. He is the director of the Colorado Workforce Development Council. Lee, it's been a couple of months since you were in studio with us. We had Britta Blodgett in with us the last couple of months coming in. I know you've got a lot on your plate. You just took over director position in July, correct?
Correct, yes.
Awesome. So how have you been?
Yeah, so thanks, Alex. It is great to be here with you. You know, the summer has been filled with jumping into a lot of different aspects of our work in terms of talent development in the state. We've hosted a couple different statewide convenings, bringing together workforce boards and local partners in July for a Workforce 2020 event to really look to the future. And then in August, the CWDC got to be a sponsor for the Skill Up event, which is bringing frontline staff from our workforce centers, adult education, vocational rehabilitation, worked in partnership with Skillful on that event, and really had a great chance to be with the folks who are guiding this work each and every day, making a difference across the table from job seekers. And so it's been a lot of fun activity happening lately.
Awesome. That is amazing. And just to remind our audience, the Colorado Workforce Development Council is a governor-appointed business-led coalition. The vision of the CWDC is that every Colorado business has access to a skilled workforce, and that every Coloradan has access to meaningful employment, resulting in statewide economic vitality. And you mentioned that you've been focusing lately on this business aspect for the CWDC. And so I'm excited to talk about this new business engagement guide that you guys have going on. And if you are checking out our website for the blog post right now, you can click right on that. But it is on CWDC's website now, officially.
Absolutely, it is. And so we have a few folks here with us today to talk about this, and we're excited to share in this launch. So let me introduce each of them. They can say a few words now. We have Andrew Bercich and Ryan Gensler. Engagement is that key word. We collaborate, we bring it to the table. So excited to have these partners. So Andrew, welcome.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Alex and Lee. As Lee said, I'm Andrew Bercich. I am with IBM in the talent and engagement practice, but I'm also the chair of the Arapahoe Douglas Workforce Development Board in the South Denver metro area, and then I'm also the vice chair of the National Association of Workforce Boards out of Washington, D.C., which is really the advocacy arm of the 550 workforce boards nationwide in DC, so that we're really trying to drive the workforce development agenda broadly across the United States. And you know, because of that, and because of I think my involvement and what we've done here in Colorado, I think we get a little bit of a positive rap nationwide because of the advances that we've had in workforce development, but also the voice that the state has garnered. You know, not only folks on the ground, but even up to the governor's level, the innovative things that we've done. And I think that's a great segue to.
Indeed, absolutely. So, Ryan, you've been a part of some of those innovations recently. So tell us about you.
Yeah, thanks, Lee and Alex, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all. I think COBRT's done a great job with this programming. So I'm with CareerWise Colorado as a part-time piece right now. I also am with an organization called Skillful, which is working on building skills-based practices with employers and also workforce boards across the state and country, and also get to work with you, Lee, on our sector strategies at the state level with the Workforce Development Council, helping build up public-private partnerships for the betterment of the business community and also for job seekers. But I'll be representing mostly CareerWise in this segment, and so CareerWise is a youth apprenticeship system. It's something that the governor has been piloting here in Colorado and pushing here for a couple years now, and we now have youth apprenticeships with K-12 partners in over 70 businesses across the state in 5 different communities, all unique to their own, and in kind of your non-traditional apprenticeship pathways, looking at IT and business operations, financial services, among others. So happy to be here and talk more about that work today.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
And so what we're really excited to talk about today is the announcement and release of a new business engagement guide. And this is a document and a tool that businesses can use to understand how they can really play a role in being co-creators of talent in partnership with the education system, the public workforce system, and training throughout the state of Colorado. And Andrew, you mentioned the reputation that Colorado has nationally for the things that we've done in this space. And really that's a theme we're looking to. I think within this guide, we're calling on businesses to stand stand tall. And when we use that terminology, we're kind of evoking the image of the Colorado blue spruce. You've got a tree that is reaching up and also has great roots. And when you think about what we're known for here in the West, it's that ability and that grit to just do things, to work on your own, to create something out of nothing. And, we get caught up in that a lot. A lot of the businesses in this state have focused on what they do best, and they've been able to yield great success. And at the same time, if you're going to have a business that is ready to withstand recessions, ready to withstand rapid growth phases, ready to evolve and adapt to the shifting demands of our workforce, if you think about the demographics of millennials actually moving into their 30s and a younger generation entering the workforce, and still we're in a phase where we have 5 generations in the workforce, businesses really need to also have deep roots, to be grounded in what they're doing, to be able to withstand those different shifts and phases. And so this guide presents some real practical ways in which businesses can shore up their talent pipeline, become co-producers of talent. And there's 2 real phases to this guide that we want to talk about today. And on this show, we'll dig into the first aspect in our opening segment, the second aspect in the second half. And number 1, that is, how can businesses lead at a collective table? What does it mean to really reach out to your neighbors, to engage together in working on your industry? And again, if you think of that Western image that you've got someone who is determined to get by on their own, has a lot of capabilities, but sometimes the flood comes, and sometimes you got to reach out for help with your neighbors to rebuild that bridge or do something collectively. And that's really what we're looking at when we talk about leading a collective table. So 3 key ways that we talk about that businesses can do that. 1 is to be involved in sector partnerships. A second is to get connected with industry intermediaries. And a third is to be involved with local workforce development boards. The CWDC, as our office, we support the State Workforce Development Board. We also have a network of local workforce boards throughout the state, and Andrew will talk a little bit more about that work later on. The second component, once you have come to a collective table, where do you go from there? And the second theme we really hit on is, how can you open your doors? What does it mean to bring training into the workplace? And for some of you, you're thinking, this isn't new. I have a leadership development program. I always groom my own leaders from within. And we definitely see that a lot. For some people out there, they think, well, I don't need any skills. I teach everybody what they need to know coming in. And the reality is, we see a lot of dispersion across the state. And we see a lot of hiring practices where HR departments have put a degree requirement on a position because it's an easy cut. When you're getting 300 resumes coming in the door for 5 positions, how do you sift through that? It can be an easy cut, but when you do that and you use a proxy rather than talking about the skills you actually need for a job, you're missing out on a lot of untapped talent. As we think about the reality of our economy in this state, with unemployment hovering around 2.9%, we really have to be unlocking untapped talent pools in order for businesses to have the workforce that they need to move forward. So that's the heart of this guide, and we're really excited to share that with you all. It can be found on our website, colorado.gov/CWDC, and we're going to be promoting this business guide excessively over the next several months. And so to help you understand a little bit about what this means and what you'll see when you look at it, we have Andrew and Ryan to talk with us. So I want to start with you, Andrew. From your background, you shared a little bit, but in what ways have you been a part of leading at a collective table?
Well, for me, it really started quite a while ago, almost 10 years ago, with the Greeley Commission on Disabilities, and coming together collectively with other business leaders who had in their minds that, number one, there's a problem that needs to be solved, and they may have different takes on what that problem may be, right? In some cases, for disabilities, it may lead to higher levels of homelessness. For others, it may be, a capabilities and a self-sufficiency angle that they're looking at. For me, when I first got involved, I was working for a large call center operator that had major operations there in northern Colorado, and this was around finding a workforce that, even during that time, again, this is 10 years ago, when you've got almost 10% unemployment in Colorado, so finding talented people was not necessarily the problem. It was finding people that really wanted to stay committed to a job. And so in this particular case, we were looking for, what's our business problem and how can we solve that and be a benefit to the community? Well, that has continued on in other roles that I've taken since then, and really morphed into really thinking very collectively around what are larger issues that we have within our community around just the ability to continue to drive economic development. And the number one aspect, I think that we would look at creating this last mile to job creation is the ability and the talent pool that exists and the ability to drive skill creation. And what we've found is that in many cases, whether it's schools, whether it's training programs, technology and the way that we do business is accelerating at a faster pace than we can potentially keep up with it, right? We're seeing technologies that are replacing people. We're finding that technology augments skills that once were mandatory in a job and making it now maybe less of a requirement, and we're starting to see that the requirements for skills in that same job are changing to where it's more focused on having soft skills, and we aren't necessarily adept at training and developing those skills as a system, either an education system or as a workforce development system. So that's where sitting and getting involved in some of these kinds of, let's say, sector partnerships and things of that nature has been so critical. We can now talk about what's really happening in my business. And before joining IBM, I was with a communications firm, and we were focused on a sector partnership around kind of next gen technology networks. And what we found was there just aren't enough people that know how to splice fiber optic wires. And there are no real programs to teach someone how to splice a fiber optic wire. But when you think about things like 5G networks and the amount of data that we transmit as businesses today, we need people that know how to splice fiber optic wires. And we're going to need more and more and more of those, because 5G networks are great, but you have to have a lot more cell towers in a lot more places to be able to make that system work. So these are the kinds of things that collectively we now need to look at. And one thing I would say for businesses, sometimes it's scary to face, the prospect of co-opetition, right? And sit down with our peers and in some cases our competitors and really work to develop a skills pipeline for each other, knowing that maybe the guy sitting across the table from me is going to get that person I really wanted. But that just means that's one more person that's still available in the market, right? And that has the skills that are required for the next generation of jobs that are going to be out there. And jobs are changing rapidly. 85% of the jobs that are going to exist in 2030 have yet to be invented. And these are things like drone dispatchers, AI cybersecurity intelligence professionals, right? These are kinds of things, and we aren't teaching that in school today, right? So what we're really focusing on is what does this next generation of workforce development need to look like so that we can continue to build skills for the future. So.
Okay, great. I want to go to Ryan for just a moment. You introduced the idea of the sector partnerships and that tension that can be there when a company shows up and they meet the guy that is the arch enemy and the one you're doing battle with in the marketplace each every day. Ryan, you've seen this up close from the manufacturing standpoint. How do you see the process work, and what about the process limits that competition and gets people working together?
Well, the fact of the matter is you're bringing businesses together to solve a mutual problem, right? Something that's affecting their entire industry. And you're not going to share IP in that process. There's no danger in sharing or losing customers because of that. Your customers aren't at the table. Really, you're working to collaboratively attack an issue that's affecting your whole ecosystem. So if you don't, as an industry, attack this problem, then your business doesn't exist regardless. So first, collaborate, solve these problems, and then you can compete with each other, right? There's a great example of that actually in the outdoor rec industry in the Upper Arkansas River Valley. Their big competition is Summit County, right, where I-70 is, and it's easier to get to. And so before they can start fighting with each other over customers, they need to fight with the next community over to get customers. And so they collaborated in their region to start building out these marketing plans to get people to come to their community, and then they can start fighting for those customers. But especially in the workforce space, you're either buying your talent or making your talent. And if you're not collaborating, then you're going to be buying your talent and stealing from each other and artificially raising the cost of your labor. So it is in the business's best interest to actually collaborate with each other and build these pathways that keep the training costs down for your business.
Yeah.
Not to mention, in these sector partnerships, you have public sector folks that are here to help, right? I think from the business perspective, I know when I was working at a manufacturing plant here in Denver, before I ever got into this workforce world, it was kind of overwhelming how many school districts wanted to learn about what we needed as a business, and how many community colleges wanted to build another injection molding program, and they wanted our input. We realized that there's a lot of people out there to help, and it's overwhelming if you're just by yourself. But if you're a coalition of businesses coming to the table, then you can kind of collectively say, well, this is what we need from all of you. They can then figure out what programs they have, what funding they have, what resources they have on the public side to support that work, and then elevate the entire industry together. And then you can go back to your competition with each other.
Right. So our sector partnership network, that is industry-based and regionally based as well. So we see healthcare coming together in the Metro Denver area and in northern Colorado and in southwestern Colorado in the Durango community. And so with that model, it really is about what is the needs of one industry? How do they prepare? One of the other models we reference in the guide is engaging with workforce development boards. And these are not industry specific, but they are regionally specific. So Andrew, tell us about your engagement with the Arapahoe Douglas Workforce Board. What does that look like, and what are some of the benefits you've seen for your business through that?
Sure. So I would start by saying this is now the third business I've been associated with AD Works and the board with. And I think more than anything, one thing that really starts to stand out when you think about getting involved with a workforce development board, and as you know, as a business, really the actual the one-stop operator who's operating the job centers and providing the training and providing candidates for job openings and things like that. One thing that's really been of value to me, in addition to all those things that you expect if you're a business, is the amount of labor market intelligence and data and understanding I get from our board about what's happening in our market, right? This goes towards economic development. I tend to get, I think, good early intel, not before it's announced, but earlier than you might see in a press release or something like that. But we get good intelligence about that. It's helped us in prior roles where I've had some responsibility around determining new site locations for those businesses, where we should think about putting some of those locations, things of that nature. Those are services and advantages I think that you get working with your local workforce board that, unless you're working with a really savvy site selector or someone like that you just don't recognize are the business value to the board. And, I think one thing that really needs to be called out here is these are business-led boards. By law, they have to be at least 50% businesses on the board. They have to be led by someone from a large business. And so from that perspective, everything that they're doing should help to lift up business, while at the same time lifting up that job seeker, that skill seeker, because that all creates a strong, solid foundation for us from an economic development perspective. And I think, when you think about the work that Lee and his team are doing in putting this work out today, I think a lot of times the question to me is, how do I get involved? Well, now you've actually got a playbook, right? And every business wants a playbook. It's there. You just got to go download it, read it, and get involved. And each board has different ways of getting involved. Certainly, we can recommend sitting on the board. That's a great way to get involved. But it's as simple as going and sitting down and doing resume reviews one afternoon when you've got some downtime. It builds great will within the community for your business. It builds great job seeker awareness. And it gives you an idea of what's actually happening out in the real world, where people are looking for jobs. What's really, what's a great cross-section and representation of the job seekers that are in the market today? And then how do I use that to leverage decision-making around the skills that I need for the future? If I need to build skills, do I need to go buy, skill development from an outside third party? Things of that nature. You just can't replace that kind of on-the-ground intelligence.
Okay, fantastic. And so, you mentioned the cross-representation of the workforce. I think sometimes people think about the public workforce system and they get this image of the unemployment office, where in the 30s everybody lined up to wait to be handed something, and that's shifted a little bit, but that's far from the reality as to exactly what our workforce centers do and who they serve. Who have you seen come through those doors in terms of the different types of job seekers?
So I've seen everything from SVPs of corporations. I've not yet seen a CEO. I will put that out there.
Good.
But I've seen SVPs, and I've seen everything down to high school students who have yet to have their first career. Certainly we've seen folks that, situations happened in their lives and they ended up, incarcerated for one reason or another, and now they're trying to get their lives back on track. They're coming out, and they need skills so that they can, get gainful employment and reduce the rate of recidivism, some of those kinds of things. I mean, it really is all makes and models, let's say, of job seeker that you could imagine. And I think it's important to note, you may be an SVP, but you may have worked for that company for 25 years, and you may have had people doing things for you. That doesn't necessarily mean you have the skills you need to go get your next job, right? And especially that next job that is maybe better than the job that you left. And so, from that perspective, I don't think that there's any kind of discounting the additional help that you can get from the public workforce system, because it's not an unemployment office. This isn't a charity case. This is a case by case. If you want to look at what skills you need to get where you want to be, we can sit down and do that and help provide that kind of insight for you.
Right.
I think that's also a good word of caution for businesses, right? Just because someone has a title doesn't mean they have the skills, right? That's a great point. So when you're, as a business, when you're thinking about the job descriptions you're putting out there and who you're connecting with, make sure that you're actually looking for the competencies and skills that you need to get the job done, not just legacy credentials or previous experience titles, right? That's two different things, and I think that's a pretty antiquated way about going about talent development now, and there's plenty of resources like your workforce boards that can help you figure that part out.
Sure, and even help you, great point there. There are SVPs that wouldn't be an assistant manager, at another company, right? Just based on title elevation and some of those kinds of things. I think we all get that, but
Yeah. So just to mention, at the workforce centers, which exist throughout the state of Colorado, one of the services they provide is that labor market information. So if you're interested in understanding the demographics of your community, who your customers are now, or who your customers may be down the road, you can reach out to your workforce center and get customized reports and tailoring. They can also work with you to post jobs, to host a job fair, to get you in front of candidates. And if you're a small business and you think, I don't have the time to do this screening, or I'd love to do skills testing to really understand if someone who says they can do X, Y, and Z can actually do that, all that is something a workforce center can do on your behalf. So they can be your ad hoc or your contracted out HR department in a lot of ways. And so there's great services there. And then by getting engaged on the board, you're able to add your voice to the needs of your local community and to ensure that education is teaching to the right skills, and that our systems at all levels are preparing people for the jobs that industries need immediately and preparing people for the jobs that they need a little bit further down the road as well. So lots of great ways. Andrew, you mentioned that Colorado has a reputation nationally. What makes this a little bit unique in the country right now?
I think, and you brought this up earlier, we're not afraid to take risks. The types of things that we're looking at in particular, we're talking, hearing a little bit more about some of the high school apprenticeships and things like that. We're really very progressive when it comes to skills development. We've recognized the fact that this is not necessarily a degree game, right? There's a fallacy for the last 30 years that you need a degree to succeed in this country, and that's left us with a dearth of skills. Today, this is about skills, and we are the state that has recognized that the most. So great job, Colorado.
Well, we will be right back here on Connect and Collaborate. Stay with us, like and subscribe to your YouTube page while you're here. Check out colorado.gov/CWDC for more information as well. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we are having our monthly check-in here with the Colorado Workforce Development Council. We have Lee Wheeler-Berliner, the director of CWDC, in studio with us, and we are having a fantastic conversation about your brand new business engagement guide.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alex. So
Yes.
again, we are just releasing today a guide for Colorado businesses on how they can get engaged in becoming co-producers of talent development. And the two components of that guide are how you get involved by leading at a collective table, and there's a few models we've been talking through, and then the second half is really about how you open your doors and what it means and the differences that can happen when companies open up their doors to think about how they bring training in-house to really ensure that they've got the right workforce for the future. So we're joined here by Andrew Bercich, who is with IBM and the Arapahoe Douglas Workforce Board. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And Ryan Gensler as well. I'm representing CareerWise Colorado today. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as we headed into the break, Andrew, you were talking about Colorado's profile nationally and that we have a good reputation, and part of that is taking risks.
Right.
Yeah. So one of those maybe risk or kind of advancements we've looked at is, what does it look like if you take a high school student, a 16-year-old, and get them in the workplace several days a week? And when I say the workplace, I have a high school student in my office today who's doing great work for us as an apprentice, but what does that look like if they're on the shop floor of a manufacturer or involved in an IT program? So Ryan, I want you to give us a little bit overview of the CareerWise program and what that model looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So CareerWise has been developing the past couple of years competency-based training plans for apprentices that start as juniors in high school. And that looks like literally about 2 days a week, the junior is in the workplace doing productive activities for the business. And this isn't kind of internship projects that you create on a whim because you have some student that's there to do something for you. It's actually tasks that you need to have done in your business for the productivity of your business. That switches to be 3 days a week, their senior year of high school, and then following graduation of high school, it's full-time work essentially with some college courses alongside that. So the whole continuum looks like 3 years of them gradually ramping up their skills to a middle skill or higher job in varying industries, like you said. So it could look like an IT help desk person, right? It could be the person that works in your office and does IT. That could be a high school apprentice that graduates into that role. It could be a software coder and developer, or a quality technician at a manufacturing plant that's doing quality tests on the products being produced. There's a variety of occupations and roles. You can go to our website and learn more about the individual actual occupations that we have training plans for, careerwisecolorado.org. But the key is that these are competency-based, right? And so they're not learning just the specifics of a job and the tasks that are needed for that job, because we don't know how long that job is going to be there, and the businesses don't know how long they're going to need that job. And we're asking them to project out hiring for several years, right? This is a 3-year apprenticeship, and we want them to keep that employee, that apprentice, following the apprenticeship. So really, these are to be flexible so that they are productive in a variety of roles within your business, so that as your needs as a business flex, so does your staff. They stay productive even if that task is no longer needed. Right? And that's what's critical about our education system. It's being flexible and nimble enough to be moving as fast as the needs in the workplace really are. Right. I think our previous system, our old system of apprenticeships, don't necessarily meet that, right? And if you look at some of the gold standards of apprenticeships and work-based training across around the globe, they have much higher level competency-based training plans. And then, of course, the business has to do some training on the specifics as well. But that way, these plans are relevant even in the future of work.
Right. And I would add, we look at apprenticeships, and I think a lot of folks, have a vision in their mind about what an apprentice is, right? This is not your parents' or your grandparents' apprenticeships. We're talking about apprentices in financial services and broadcasting and places that you wouldn't have traditionally had an apprentice, right? This isn't the electrician or the plumber. It certainly could be, right? But this goes much more broad across our entire business landscape. And I think, as if I have advice for businesses, it's consider these options, right? you know that you're going to be needing people, right? With our unemployment rate right now, getting a young, dedicated person who is willing to learn, has shown that kind of capability, and can come in and support your business for at least 3 years is a luxury in many cases. And so, thinking about those kinds of things as you make business decisions around your workforce planning and staffing planning, these are really viable and important decisions to make. And it's a great program.
Well, thank you. And to that point, right, we have an aging workforce as well, right? If you look at the amount of baby
They'll never
boomers,
retire.
They can't.
Yeah, that's right. If they want to live in Denver, they can. But you need to backfill that, right? And a lot of these industries don't have a great way to connect with young people today to get them interested in their industry, right? If you look at the insurance industry, and you try talking to a millennial who's on their phone the whole time and say, why don't you get into insurance? That's not a conversation that's had, right? And it's not going to be a big sell. But if you start younger, if you start at a high school age, not after college, not after they've kind of explored around a little bit, but actually start younger and show them what the skills are that they could be learning and the excitement of working in a professional environment at that young age, you develop that talent, which creates loyalty and retention. It also creates loyalty and retention, we're finding with some of our business partners, for the existing workforce that they have, because some of these managers, some of these other kind of staff within their businesses are now getting to mentor and train these young people, and it reinvigorates them. It gets them excited about the work that they do as they teach these young people these skills. And it really kind of creates a whole new engaged workforce that you might not have had before.
Right. And so hosting an apprenticeship program is an amazing way to open your doors as a business. And if you think, why do this? Again, just pointing to some of the data in our guide, we highlight from Burning Glass that in the U.S., 67% of employers cannot find qualified candidates. We see that 60% of employers have vacancies for 12 weeks or longer. And if you think about the hits on productivity, if you don't have somebody for 12 weeks, and we've got more than 1 million unfilled jobs in healthcare that are skilled positions, but we can't find the talent for that right now. So that's part of that imperative nationally. And again, we're seeing the same trends here in Colorado as we have the tightening labor market to really ensure we're developing the right skills with people. And when you talk about career exploration, we've talked in this setting, Alex, about our work-based learning continuum and the variety of opportunities that businesses can get involved in. And so if you think, well, I'm not ready for an apprenticeship, what does that mean? Well, have you thought about opening your doors to a tour for a group of middle school students? Because they may live near your facility, they may have a sense of what it means to be involved in that workplace, but that's probably not the right image in their head in terms of what that means, what the workplace and culture and environment is like. If somebody says to you that I want you to work in this large plant and you're going to build windmills all day long, it may not occur to you that that actually means you're getting to solve detailed problems that are akin to mapping out puzzles on a floor, and you've got the radio on every day with the rotating genres of the best hits and above you. So it can be a really neat kind of workplace experience. And so taking the step of opening your doors as a business to inviting young people to come in is going to awaken their minds to what their opportunities are, and they can start to expand, and then you can think about different ways that this can play out. We've seen some models of companies that really like the idea of bringing in apprentices. They're not quite there, and so they start with an internship. What does it look like if you start bringing in summer interns for 10 or 12 weeks, a little bit lighter commitment? And what might it look like if you invite 10 interns in, knowing you're going to hire 2 apprentices? Then they've had this 3-month trial period where you can actually see who is showing up on time, who's showing that commitment and willingness to learn and to absorb, and who's going to be a good fit with your company culture. And to your point, Andrew, that these are not apprenticeships only in the skilled trades. And so these are modern apprenticeships. CareerWise is promoting modern youth apprenticeships for high school students. They are still engaged in their high school curriculum, but they are going out into the job place multiple days a week, 2 days a week as a junior, 3 days a week as a senior. And so there's flexibility in terms of what that looks like, and they're earning while they learn to make better decisions down the road as to what they want to do moving forward.
I'd add as well, this is a business strategy. It doesn't necessarily have to be a youth apprenticeship, right? We're certainly talking about those today.
Certainly.
But that's another great way to get involved with your local workforce development board. Mm-hmm. If you've really struggled to find talent, you feel like you can develop that talent, but you just don't have the capacity or the capability to do everything that you need, visit with them and see what you could do to create a registered apprenticeship where you can go to your local community college and maybe get some additional classwork, things like that you can't provide within your own business environment, but then you still get, dedicated employee that wants to learn and can pick up that skill that you need. And this is really about skills and competencies anymore, right? It's a lot less about degrees. Certainly talk about IBM's point of view on that if you want, but those are the kinds of things that you can do to really engage with your local workforce board if you're a business.
Absolutely.
And I know that's in your package as well, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of great opportunities there. So some people may have this idea that if I'm going to host an apprenticeship, that there's a huge process. I got to go through all this paperwork and the government gets involved in my business and it just seems like a big thing I don't want to mess with and don't want to walk into that. Ryan, how does CareerWise assist a business in getting up and running pretty quickly and with fairly low effort?
Yeah, we have a whole team that provides supports to the businesses, from identifying the occupations within your organization and the competencies there and the kind of the training plans that we already have developed for certain occupations, to actually teaching your managers how to work with a 16-year-old and become mentors and supervisors, and teaching your HR team how to become coaches for someone who's maybe not used to being in the professional world. And then we also have a dedicated relationship manager that's working with you as a business and helping liaison with the school and the student and the parent to make sure everything is running as seamless as possible. It really should be minimal lift on the business in terms of kind of the administrative part of this, right? It's really their work comes in when it's training and providing those and teaching those skills. Ultimately, we ensure or work with our businesses to get to a positive ROI by the end of their apprenticeship, right? After 3 years of training this student, you should have recouped all of your costs and then some, right? And that's kind of the way that we need businesses to really start thinking about their talent development system. Don't just throw money at recruitment. Don't just trust what skills come in the door, right? Grow them yourself. Make sure they have the skills that you want. Grow them in your image, and do it in a way that is positive to your bottom line, right? This isn't philanthropy. The idea of working with high school students for philanthropy and goodwill, it's nice, right? And some of the career exploration work certainly can be that, and it's helpful for the students and for your industry and kind of boosting your own image in the community. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, the apprenticeship concept is about a positive ROI. It's a smarter way to train and grow your own talent. And that's really the core of all of this.
Absolutely. So if there's a company who says, I like this idea, but you say training costs money, I don't have a training budget, what would either of you say to that company in terms of how they can find some resources to make this happen?
Well, I personally, I think they should have a training budget. That's a good strategy as a company to ensure that your business is always going to have the skills that it needs, because we know that the needs of businesses are changing rapidly. So they're going to have to start stepping up on that point. It's also just a good benefit in terms of kind of looking better than your competitor, if you will, right? A lot of companies are starting to offer that as a benefit and value. But I also know that the state and local workforce boards are providing a lot of supports as well. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Andrew.
Yeah, so, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have no budget, right? I can give you an example. In the last couple of years, a major defense contractor with a huge presence in Colorado came to the workforce board to use H-1B dollars, right? So when you're an employer and you sponsor a foreign national to come and work, and be an IT worker or what have you, and you put your dollars into the H-1B application process, those aren't dollars that just magically go to Washington D.C. and end up at the Old Ebbitt Grill because somebody's spending them. Those are dollars that go into funding that come back into the states to do worker retraining. In this case, this was an older technology that was going to be phased out, and if those employees weren't retrained, those jobs would be lost. And it was an expensive retraining and those kinds of things, and so the workforce board was able to go get more than $1 million of retraining. It's not corporate welfare in that particular case. This company has paid a lot of money into the system, and the positive benefit that happens as a result of those jobs not being lost, if you think about the money we saved on unemployment insurance, the money we saved on, other training programs that they would have had to use coming through the system, those are hugely beneficial dollars that were spent. And those folks, now that they're retrained, have the opportunity to continue to grow within their organization and make more and more money and have a longer term career. So greater sense of self-worth in some case. I mean, as anybody who's been through a job loss, it's tough. And that would have been a lot of employees out having that same feeling and competing against each other for the limited jobs that were available. So, those are some of the areas where, you don't even necessarily have to have no budget. This just could be an extraordinary circumstance. But to the training perspective, that is a business strategy that you must employ. It's the only way to stay competitive, because the technology in every industry we're finding is changing at nearly an exponential rate at this point. I don't care if you've been making the same widget since the 1940s. Even at least the back office skills that are going to be required to continue manufacturing that widget are changing, and you need to be able to adapt to that. Your employees need to be able to adapt to that, or they're going to move on, and it's going to cost you more in terms of a business cost to replace and retrain that person than it would have to just train them initially. You're going to pay for that training one way or the other. That's good. The long and the short of it, right?
The average cost to recruit an employee in Colorado is $24,000 per employee to recruit and train and keep that employee, and that's expected to go up 21% over the next 5 years. That's an extraordinary cost in your recruitment budget, in your HR budget, in one way or another. So if you're not putting that up front in training and ensuring that you're growing your own, then you're wasting those dollars. And
that's just your recruitment and training costs. That isn't the actual opportunity cost. It's right. Anywhere between 50 and 150% of the annual salary. If you lose a salesperson, for example, and it takes, let's say, 5 months to replace that person, and then they've got a ramp period that that has lower productivity. Now you've maybe lost, maybe it takes 6 months to do that. You've lost 13 months of full productivity, right? That's a huge impact on your bottom line. So training people makes a difference.
That's right.
Absolutely, and that was the point I was hoping you were going to get to. If you don't think you have it there, think about how much you're spending on recruiting and how can you use that to build your own workforce and create that talent pipeline. And there are resources available. The H-1B program is one example through local workforce centers. There's also a variety of other options that can help subsidize the wage for employees to start out. We have an Innovative Industries internship program where companies can get reimbursed for part of the wages for bringing on student interns into growing industries in Colorado. And, one example, when I first started in my role with the CWDC, I was traveling the state talking about this great new federal law. And here's all the shifts and changes. And, I came from the nonprofit sector. It didn't take me long to kind of adopt a little bit of this government gobbledygook kind of language and nomenclature. And I was in one community and I thought I'd done this great job talking about here's what's shifting, here's why it's shifting, here's how we prepare for this new federal law. And the gentleman stands up and he's like, yeah, that's great. And it's all kind of just junk over there. My friend Joe needs 3 employees tomorrow. Where's he going to get them? That's what this is about. And that's what opening your doors means, because through the workforce centers, Joe can get 3 people tomorrow and he can get some subsidies to pay those wages or to support that training depending on the needs of that local community. And so these partnerships exist. And when you open your doors, when you come to these tables through sector partnerships and through the workforce boards, then you can find out more about these opportunities. Another piece I want to touch on briefly is that of the role of industry intermediaries. If you're not connected to a trade association, that's a missed opportunity, because our trade associations are well versed now in how you set up a job description for an internship. How do you engage in competency planning for apprenticeships? And they can be resources to you to help you get some of these programs up and off the ground and to engage moving forward. And so, Ryan, you've been doing this work. CareerWise is on their 3rd cohort at this point. What are some of those?
But yeah.
Yeah. What are you have not been involved necessarily that whole time. What are some of the benefits employers are reporting from their experience with CareerWise and from having those apprentices on board?
Yeah, so I mentioned a little bit earlier on about kind of the engaged or re-engaged workers who are now kind of reinvigorated in the work they're doing because they're training and teaching these young people the work that they've been doing, and it kind of reignites some of the passion about what they're doing. There's also some innovation that comes with that. One of our employers mentioned, these students, they ask questions, these apprentices, I should say. They ask questions, they ask why, right? And then the managers and supervisors start looking at each other and like, well, yeah, good question. Why are we doing it this way? And they're already starting to reevaluate some of the processes that they've been doing, even just having these apprentices for about a year and a half. So getting a fresh perspective, that new young look is really important for a company who wants to stay relevant in this very fast-paced changing economy. So that's a huge value, right? There's also just the numbers, right? And the fact that by recruiting with us through high school students and getting to, you're working with high school students who are used to sitting in a classroom during this time, not necessarily working. And so you can afford to pay a lower training wage while they're getting ramped up. And then following the apprenticeship, you bump them up to that fuller wage. When you're working with adults, they can't take that lower wage, right? They have bills to pay. And so your ROI takes a lot longer to recoup when you're working with an adult population versus a youth population when you're working with high school students. Not to mention the added supports they get from their counselor at high school and their teachers at their schools. All of these different pieces play into a more supported worker that's also coming at a cheaper cost. Yep. Right. So your ROI comes back.
Okay, great. So again, the CareerWise model gets youth out of the classroom into the workplace. There's also other ways employers can get engaged more at the high school level and really look downstream with their talent. Andrew, IBM is involved in the PTech model with the St. Vrain Valley School District. Tell us about how that works and what that means.
Sure. So this is a program that we actually started a number of years ago with a high school in Brooklyn. And it's expanded now. There are about 150, maybe 160 now high schools nationwide that are part of this PTech model, but it's actually the equivalent of a 6-year high school. It's a 9 through 14 school that allows a student to come in and, in much the same way we would look at apprenticeships, getting hands-on experience while you're doing classroom work. These students are actually coming in and they're going through classroom work and then getting hands-on experience in various technologies. So at St. Vrain, it's a more IT-focused program. There's another program here in Colorado. I think it's in El Paso County that actually does. I think HVAC and cooling systems and things of that nature, right? But the idea is that these students will actually graduate with a credential, whether that's an associate's degree or some other kind of credential that makes them immediately employable. And this is a part of, I think, our broader strategy as a company to focus on skills rather than degrees. So can you have a credential and be as effective as someone who's gone and gotten a 4-year degree? I mean, for us, if you're in a IT class today as a freshman, by the time you graduate, the things you learn today are probably obsolete. Technology moves too quickly. So for us to be able to get involved at the high school level and really train these kids early in their career, not only a technology that's relevant today, but a way to continue learning and to continue growing. It sets a foundation, for us and for others to continue to see, a very effective workforce for the future.
Absolutely. And that concept of ensuring we have an effective workforce for the future is what this is all about. And when you go to our website, when you download this new business engagement guide, you'll see some statistics about the Colorado Talent Pipeline. We know that not every 9th grader is going to get a 2 or a 4-year degree. And yet we know that 60% to 74% of the jobs of 2020 will need some type of credential beyond high school. And so we rely on our businesses to come to the table, to step up and be leaders in these partnerships with our workforce boards, so we know what the signals are that businesses need, and then that helps to drive that development of talent. And so we hope you can get involved. To go to our website, colorado.gov/CWDC, and check out the guide.
Awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you on, talking about the Business Engagement Guide for CWDC. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.